was born November 4th, 1922, in Norway at home.
Norway, Michigan, in August 16, 1924.
Besides my oldest sister, then a brother younger than I am, and a sister, Carolyn, who's younger than I am.
My various discussions with people had to do with, why did Joe die and not me? We were going to California to a reunion of the 35th Infantry Division, and I found Joe Kosis by way of letter. He was going to go to the reunion in California. I got out there. He died 2 weeks.
My father was a wagoner in the First World War. That meant that he drove his team up to the front and brought ammunition. You know, he never really talked about that war either. I don't understand why he wanted to hear from my brother, because I never heard my dad talk about the war. But he did teach us all the songs that they used to sing, you know, over there. But when we rode, he would sing those songs to us, I think because we had 4 children in the back seat. He wanted to do something to keep them quiet. So we went for a ride, and this beautiful Sunday afternoon, the radio was playing, and they announced that we were at war.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, by air. President Roosevelt has just announced.
Well, now we had lots of friends that were gone, and now they're going to war. You know, just awful, just awful.
I had a notice of being drafted in 1942, March, and actually drafted, they allowed me to spend a year at U of M. So I went from Norway High School to University of Michigan with a one-way ticket. Okay. I had the first year at U of M then in 1942 and 1 month of 43. Met my future wife on Christmas Day of 42 in Highland Park, Michigan. And then in March, I was drafted into the service.
So he got sent around the country a few times, and he was in officers' training camp. But they pulled all the available soldiers out.
They called us guys 90-day wonders. I got 90 days in Fort Ord, California. And at the time of my entry to the service, I had applied for the Air Force. Well, after 90 days, they actually accepted me, and they sent me to New York City. I was hot to fly. I was being transferred back to the infantry. I said, fine, as long as I get a month's advanced training and get killed right on the beach, you know. The next morning came back and said, we can't do it. We can't do that. I didn't get approval. So literally, Roy took off, and they caught me a week later, but they didn't put me in the stockade. They sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for a month's ranger training. So that's where I got to know what war was all about. My comment about this so many times is that if you're not smart, you have to be lucky. So I was lucky they didn't throw me in the stockade, right? But I ended up being a pretty good soldier, yeah. But we did have glider training as well. We had landlocked drops from parachutes, 100 feet, not 2,000 feet in the air. Rifles and machine guns and bazookas, that sort of training. So we knew everything that we needed to know to stay alive and take care of our problem once we got overseas. I talked with Dad about that too in a letter form. He said, "You're lucky to have had all this training." I was near Indianapolis for about a week, and I called her and said, would you like to come down for a day in Indianapolis and really get to know each other? We did. She came down, spent the day from early in the morning, and then had to go back on the rail in the evening. So we had about 10, 12 hours together.
But they were very close. He had somebody to hang on to.
All the while in the service, we had hundreds of letters that we each wrote to each other.
He wrote more personal things to a girl that became his wife than he did to us. So he has all her letters. He still has all her letters and all his emails. So I don't know how they ever came through that landing. If you see that on TV, you can't imagine how anybody got through that landing.
The intense activity after the beach was kind of trying many cities that we went through, and so fast sometimes. And remember, that's about second week in September through to December 12th, which when I was captured, And all these glorious things happened in that, whatever that is, 3 months. The teacher asked them to write a letter about something that they would like to know about. Well, I got a letter from Mary Wally, my granddaughter, and she wanted to know about my experiences during World War II. Once I started thinking about that, I suddenly realized that I had put this question out of my mind. That letter caused me a very devastated person because I hadn't talked about these experiences for 40, 45 years. Well, until 9 years ago, I lost my mind. I really did. I had 4 weeks of psychiatric therapy, and we made it, so I was lucky. There's others around me that weren't as lucky because they carry it right now in their minds and haven't really felt like talking about it. You're getting close to where the Alberts came from. I suddenly realized that I could be shooting cousins or relatives. That affected me. And I was captured. I could never think of the German captors as being enemies. Just part of my life for a while. At the same time I was a prisoner, my wife's cousin who was a German soldier, became an American president. So he was in Alabama in the States making bricks in the brickyard. And I actually have a letter that was translated by a cousin of my wife's. We know that Roy is having troubles in Germany, but I'm not here. The Americans are really taking care of us, you know. So that was nice to hear. I'm an Eagle Scout as well, okay? The first one in Norway. So we were sent out to scout the area to make sure where the exact place we should land, even though the generals in back would say, this is where we want the bridge, and that was good, but how were they protecting it? Because they really knew we were coming. Well, that was a battle that started in the dark of night. Because if it were daylight, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here now. 2 days later, it was moved up the road, and all of a sudden, the tanks could cross that river that we were fighting for. We took the land all right, but Roy was captured. About 80 or so men were killed that day. Just ran out of stuff to throw at them. We were captured and put in the basement of a house.
We went up to my mother's, my two little boys and I, to do my laundry because my basement was flooded. When we broke for lunch, we were listening to the radio. There was a song called Don't Fence Me In that was playing on the radio, and the doorbell rang. So my mother went to answer the door, and there were two soldiers there with a telegram saying that my brother had been captured and was a prisoner of war in Germany.
We were taken back to the place where they send bombs to London directly. The Americans or British bombed, always dropped flares and then bombed the flares. It ended up bombing the area where we were, so I lost another 3 or 4 men. I think they put us there on purpose. That was a devastating period.
He had been shot in the leg, and they didn't do anything for him at all.
Then slowly we were transferred and brought to various prison camps along the way.
So we didn't hear from him for maybe 2 months. And then we started getting emails from him once in a while. They crossed out a lot of things in our letters that we weren't supposed to be saying before he got them. So once he sent an email and he said it was almost all black, Eleanor, so be careful what you write.
A lot of walking, a lot of tractor rail, 8 horses and 40 men in a boxcar, yeah. We had some of that too. But we finally then got to the first camp.
He said, you never take your boots off at nighttime because if you take your boots off, they're gone in the morning.
We weren't getting enough food to exist.
No food. So they couldn't give you what they didn't have. So they made grass soup.
We were asked if we wanted to move on to another camp where we would get more food, but we had to work for it. Down, not enough food. Escape, get caught, escape, get caught.
He escaped once on a bicycle with his friend, but they got just a little way out of the prison camp and got caught again. So, and I think suffered for doing that.
Our assignment was to build bunkers for machine gunners to protect Potsdam because it was a great old city, and it was. We started having to cut down trees. By that time, I was down to about 135 pounds, you know. Little things that happen along the way that are hard to think about or to talk about because we were just trying to live the hour at the time almost, you know.
He was in love with the girl that became his wife. She, I think, pulled him through that time in prison camp more than anybody else.
Then at that time, they suddenly realized that the Americans were really coming, and they were coming fast, so they moved us back into various camps that had nothing except the barbara around it, you know.
It was close to the end of the war. He always says that the Germans pulled all the able-bodied men out of whatever job they were doing, so all that was left to do something like, for instance, guards and the prison camp were all either old men or younger boys.
But by that time, the Russians were coming into our area.
They heard that the war was over.
Guards were anxious to leave.
Camp, nobody chased them anymore.
Roy and his friends were heading back to the American lines, but we didn't know where to go. Took a old Mercedes-Benz one time, and then when you ran out of the oil, the car stopped, so we stopped. Anything that would help us from walking, you know, we did, and one of which was bikes, and that even bikes break down. But we did end up getting right to the Bliss River. We're able to get across the river and meet the Americans on the other side.
When they found American soldiers, it's like, oh, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be going home. No, we wouldn't have known him. The only passenger on the plane, so it had to be Roy. He was 95 pounds when he got out of prison camp with this awful leg. And they kept him in France in the hospital and then transferred him to England in the hospital and finally sent him home. He didn't talk very much. My father wanted him to talk to him, and he just couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. And couldn't for most of his life. So most of what I found out was after he met these 67 veterans in Detroit who were all prisoners of war. They finally talked about their experiences. It's in a book.
So in other words, if something's on your mind, I hope you never have war experiences, but if something's on your mind, think it over. You may be able to solve it just by talking about it with your mother, your priest, your friend, the old man here, but you do have to talk about those things that come into your mind in a devastating way.
He got through school. It took him 8 years because he's an architect.
Just turn me loose, let me straddle my old saddle underneath the western skies. On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountains rise. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences, gaze at the moon till I lose my senses. Can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't